I felt the air shift the moment I stepped onto the red circle. The auditorium lights dimmed behind me, leaving only the glare of the stage lights at my back. And for a heartbeat, I couldn't breathe. I'd spent a lifetime hiding, my voice a whisper in staff meetings, my opinions tucked between pages of notebooks. No one read, but here, on this gleaming platform in front of hundreds of eyes, I was expected to speak, to lead, to shine. They said I was too shy to succeed. My high school guidance counselor had looked me in the eye during a career planning interview and said, "Leadership isn't for wallflowers, Jenna. You'll need more confidence than this." At my first corporate job, a manager once whispered in the break room, "She's clever, but she'll never be the one running the show, too quiet." Even friends used to joke that I'd never propose a toast at a wedding, let alone a vision for thousands of entrepreneurs tuning in online. And yet here I was, holding a lavender clicker in one hand and a water bottle in the other, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. My TED Talk on leadership confidence wasn't just another speaking gig. It was the culmination of a secret I'd cultivated in silence. I'd learned that confidence isn't something you're born with. It's the echo of each courageous moment you choose in spite of fear. From backstage, I could hear the MC wrap up, the audience clapping softly. "Please welcome Jenna Morse." The voice boomed and the music swelled. The lights swung around, illuminating the circle of red carpet. I placed both feet firmly on it, gripping the edge of the small lectern to steady myself. Then I took a breath so deep it felt like ocean air, and I began. "Good evening," I said, my voice small at first, but it carried. "I'm going to tell you about the moment I realized shyness could be my superpower." And as the words left my mouth, something shifted inside me. The audience leaned in, their faces suddenly curious, eager. They weren't expecting a shy, trembling speaker. They were expecting a story. 2 years earlier, I was crouched in the corner of my college dorm, nose buried in Brené Brown's work on vulnerability. I had auditioned for the debate team on a dare, and bombed so spectacularly that I swore never to speak up again. My roommate Layla found me crying over a thesaurus. "Jenna," she said, brushing hair from my damp cheek, "you're brilliant. You just need a battlefield that suits your style." That night, she introduced me to improv classes at the campus theater. "If you can improvise, you can conquer any fear." I laughed through tears, but I showed up the next week. In the yellowed light of a makeshift stage, I learned to embrace mistakes, to make them part of the performance. I played characters who were loud, obnoxious, fearless, everything I wasn't. And each time I flubbed a line, the room erupted with laughter, not at me, but celebrating my willingness to risk looking foolish. When a classmate handed me a microphone for the first time, my hands shook. By the end of the semester, I was crafting 5-minute skits about imposter syndrome and confidence. The improv circle became my laboratory. I tested ideas, failed fast, and discovered that instinctive reactions could be trusted. Armed with this tiny spark of bravado, I stepped into my first corporate role at Aveline and Company, a mid-size consulting firm. My title was junior analyst, but my role unofficially became culture whisperer. I listened in meetings, noticed when individuals stopped contributing, and then nudged them. "What do you think, Raj?" Or "Linda, you've got great insights on this, please share." I never raised my own hand, but I raised theirs. Over time, I saw colleagues blossom. Quiet engineers volunteered to present. Introverted marketers led product brainstorms, and one by one, people discovered their own confidence, reflected back through my questions. Then one afternoon, my manager, Elena, said something that changed my trajectory. "Jenna, you have a gift for helping people find their own voices. Have you ever considered public speaking?" I laughed, remembering the debate disaster. Me, on a stage. I gestured like someone holding a fragile object. "I'd probably break something." She smiled. "Maybe start with a webinar. No audience, just a camera and slides." That was the nudge I needed. My first webinar was a disaster. The microphone buzzed, I tripped over my words, and I clicked to the next slide before I'd finished the first point. I woke the next morning to an email from one attendee. "Thanks for your transparency. I loved how real you were, mistakes and all." That single line became my mantra. Real is relatable. I kept going. Small internal webinars, lunch and learns, eventually a regional conference where I spoke about empowering the quiet leader in you. I watched the chat box light up with thanks, stories of newfound courage, promises to speak up more often. Confidence, I realized, is contagious. So when TEDx Red Bank announced its theme, Voices Unheard, I sent in an application, a 300-word pitch about the power of quiet leadership. I had no illusions about being selected, but I wrote as if I already believed in myself. A week later, I got the email. Congratulations, we'd love to invite you to present at TEDx Red Bank. That evening, I danced around my living room, heart thrumming, tears streaming. I thought of Layla, of Elena, of everyone who'd listened when I was silent, and I knew this was my moment. The months leading to the talk were a blur of coaching sessions, slide design, voice exercises, and countless rehearsals in front of my cat, Sparky. Friends buzzed with excitement. You're going to blow their minds, but doubts lurked. What if my voice cracked? What if no one connected with a shy girl preaching confidence? Then I remembered the improv mantra, mistake forward. If I stumbled, I would let it become part of the message. Now, standing on stage, I clicked the lavender remote to project my first slide. A simple white background with the words quiet strength in soft gray. I told them about my college fear, the debate disaster, the improv revelation. I watched the audience lean forward, nodding as if recognizing their own pains. I shared the story of Raj, an engineer whose ideas reshaped our product line once he was coaxed out of silence. I spoke of Maria, a back-office accountant, who discovered a talent for leading workshops on process improvement after I asked her, "How would you solve this?" Each anecdote peeled back a layer of assumption about leadership, that it belonged to the bold, the brash, the boisterous. Instead, I painted a new portrait, leadership as listening deeply, empowering others, and speaking softly but decisively. They laughed with me when I confessed how I'd taped affirmations to my bathroom mirror. Your voice matters, and groaned when I recounted accidentally sending a work email to all company with the subject line "Just be yourself," bold in capital letters. But by the time I told them how that very email sparked an internal movement called #JustBeYourself, where employees shared vulnerable moments, the room erupted in applause. Then I paused and asked a question. Who here has ever been told, "You're too quiet to succeed"? Hundreds of hands shot up, people who'd been discounted, unseen, underestimated. I let the silence hold their courage. Then I said, "What if I told you that your quiet is your superpower?" The room stretched from doubt to curiosity. A few minutes later, I stood center stage, heart full, as the final slide glowed with a single line, "Speak your truth." I lowered my voice, gentle but unwavering. Your confidence doesn't come from a microphone or a podium. It comes from every moment you choose to speak when fear tells you to be silent. It comes from each person you help by listening. It comes from believing that your quiet strength can move mountains. Then I stepped back, arms open, and the audience rose, standing, cheering, some wiping tears. As I walked off stage, head buzzing, cheeks hot, I caught sight of the front row. Students I'd coached, colleagues who'd championed me, even Elena with tears in her eyes. And there, in the middle, sat Layla, grinning like she'd won a lifetime jackpot. Backstage, the MC greeted me with a hug. "You killed it," she whispered. "People are lining up to take notes." I laughed, remembering how Derek, the manager who once told me to quiet down, had sat in the front row, pen poised over a red notebook. I pictured his scribbles: quiet strength, empowerment through listening, soft-spoken leader. They were noting every word, every idea. That night, I lay in bed replaying the applause, the faces alight with possibility. I realized that success isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about the power to turn whispers into roars. They said I was too shy to succeed, but at TEDx Red Bank, I heard my quiet confidence echo through the hall and beyond, into living rooms and offices around the world. And I knew this was only the beginning of a story that would continue long after the lights dimmed. The morning after the TEDx talk, my inbox was a tidal wave. Messages from strangers and acquaintances alike. "This changed my life. Thank you for validating my introversion. Would you speak at our conference?" Flooded every corner of my email folders. I sat at my kitchen counter, 2 empty mugs at my elbow, and scrolled through the avalanche. A calendar invite popped up. Leadership Summit keynote May 12th. They wanted me back. Bigger stage, bigger lights. My heart fluttered between excitement and panic. I'd just learned to stand in my own quiet power, and now the world wanted more. I pressed accept, then closed my laptop with a decisive snap. The next few weeks became a whirlwind of preparation, refining slides, scripting anecdotes, working with my coach to modulate breath and pace. But beneath all the rehearsals, a new question gnawed at me: what came after the applause? I craved purpose rather than performance. I needed to turn my message into movement. A week later, I convened a small gathering at my apartment. 5 of my closest colleagues and friends, including Layla and Elena. I laid out my vision: a quiet leadership collective, an online community and mentorship program for shy professionals aspiring to influence without shouting. The group blinked at me, mugs of tea in hand. An online program, Elena asked, brow arched. What will it look like? I traced imaginary circles in the air. Weekly video sessions, a peer forum live Kunda with guest speakers, plus an annual retreat focused on experiential activities, improv workshops, confidence boot camps, storytelling circles. I saw Layla's eyes light up. We'll call it QLC. And we'll start small, beta of 20 participants, handpicked from my network. They nodded, excitement growing. Jamal, my former CTO, offered to build the platform infrastructure. Priya, my marketing lead, volunteered to craft the brand identity. Elena would curate guest speakers. In that moment, I realized leadership wasn't about solo spotlight. It was about drawing a constellation of talents into a shared orbit. We launched the QLC beta program 2 months later. 20 participants from 5 continents logged on: an engineer in Germany who dreaded presenting to his team, a teacher in Brazil longing to advocate for her students, a nonprofit director in Kenya yearning to rally volunteers. In our first video call, I invited everyone to share their silent story, the moment they felt too shy to speak. Voices crackled with vulnerability, one woman's tears at being ignored in a board meeting, another's trembling as she choked back comments during a town hall. When their stories spilled freely, something magical happened. In sharing shame, they reclaimed strength. Each week I led sessions on confidence anchors, practical exercises like breathing techniques, power poses adapted for introverts, and micro bets, where participants made 2-minute comments in group chats. We paired people for peer coaching. One introvert who excelled in writing coached another on crafting impactful Slack messages, while the second taught the first how to assert themselves in live discussion. Through shared accountability, confidence grew like ivy, quietly but powerfully. When the QLC community began posting their breakthroughs, videos of their flawlessly delivered team updates, testimonials of managers praising newfound boldness, I knew we'd struck a chord. The quiet was no longer a liability. It was fertile ground for deep, thoughtful leadership. Meanwhile, my own speaking engagements multiplied. The Leadership Summit keynote was electric. I stepped onto a stage, draped in soft purple light, scanned an audience of corporate executives, and spoke not of overcoming shyness, but of harnessing stillness. I shared a new framework: the 4 pillars of quiet leadership. Listen deeply, reflect authentically, speak intentionally, empower others. As I clicked through slides showing faces from the QLC beta, smiling confident, I watched executives nod, some scribbling furiously in notebooks. Afterward, a tall man in a tailored suit, head of a global consultancy firm, approached me. Your TED Talk taught me that leadership isn't about volume, but this summit? You've shown me how to institutionalize it. We want to license QLC for our teams. My chest thudded, a corporate partnership, not selling out, but scaling impact. We shook hands, and I realized my idea was rippling into boardrooms I'd long believed were closed to shy voices. One crisp autumn evening, I boarded a flight to Tokyo for an international conference. My carry-on was light, but my mind teemed with anticipation. I'd been invited to deliver a workshop on quiet influence in cross-cultural teams, a topic close to my heart since I'd witnessed how different cultures valued silence. Japanese participants appreciated my emphasis on the space between words, and the power of thoughtful pause. I taught them how to signal engagement through attentive body language, paraphrasing, and well-timed questions. When participants practiced, I watched them bloom, soft-spoken managers leading brainstorming circles with newfound authority. At dinner that night, the conference organizers whisked me to an intimate sushi bar. Over toro and sake, they unveiled a surprise. A documentary crew had filmed QLC participants in their workplaces, capturing before and after glimpses of shy professionals transforming their companies. They wanted to produce a feature-length film to inspire millions. Tears pricked my eyes as I imagined my shy younger self, trembling in staff meetings, now validated on a silver screen. This was beyond speeches. This was storytelling with global reach. Back home, I juggled my expanding enterprises, QLC membership growth, corporate licensing deals, the documentary in production, and an academic fellowship at Stanford to study introversion in organizational psychology. My days revolved around Zoom calls, studio sessions, and strategy meetings. Yet I held on to morning rituals, coffee on my balcony, journaling prompts about gratitude and growth, a 10-minute improv warm-up in front of Sparky, my cat, who'd become my most forgiving audience. But growth brought challenges. A rival coaching program criticized QLC for being anti-charisma, arguing that real leaders needed to be extroverted to inspire. Their blog posts painted quiet leaders as second-rate. QLC forums buzzed with doubt. Am I not good enough if I'm not loud? To address this, I hosted an emergency live session titled Quiet and Proud, opening with an admission. I wrestle with these doubts too. I invited 3 QLC alumni, a school principal, a software architect, and a nonprofit founder, to share how their measured approaches had tangibly improved performance metrics in their fields. We fielded tough questions, debunked myths, and emerged stronger. Our membership surged again, fueled by authenticity and community solidarity. On a crisp morning in December, I received an unexpected invitation. The White House Presidential Summit on Workforce Development wanted me to lead a panel on diverse leadership styles. I stared at the email, disbelief and pride warring in my chest. When I shared the news with Layla, who'd flown in from London for the holidays, she hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. "You're unstoppable," she whispered. In Washington, D.C., I strode into the Oval Office's West Wing for the briefing, awed by the hushed corridors and iconic portraits. On the panel, flanked by a military general and a Fortune 500 CEO, I waited my turn. When the moderator nodded to me, I rose and stepped to the podium, heart steady. "Real leadership," I began, "emerges when we honor the full spectrum of personalities. The world needs both the roar of the extrovert and the rumble of the introvert." I sketched the 4 pillars again, showing interactive poll results from QLC participants who'd seen team productivity rise by 30%. A ripple of applause followed as I concluded. Quiet confidence is not a whisper against the storm, it is the calm at its eye, guiding us through. That night, after returning home, I sat alone in my living room, gazing at the framed tickets from my first failed debate attempt, now etched with the word failure in bold letters I'd added as a reminder. I sipped chamomile tea and reflected on the journey, the booing whispers of Too Shy, the shaky TEDx microphone, the struggles of beta participants, the boardrooms that welcomed QLC, the White House panel. Shyness had never been a liability. It had been a foundation, a wellspring of empathy, listening, and intentional action. My phone buzzed, a text from a former debate teammate who'd contacted me days before. She'd watched the documentary trailer and wrote, "I'm in awe. Remember that time you froze at the podium? You've come so far." I smiled, fingertips tracing the message, and replied, "We all freeze. The magic is choosing to move forward anyway." Before bed, I opened the QLC platform and typed a new discussion prompt. "What's your next bold step?" Responses poured in, someone proposing a cross-team panel at their hospital, another volunteering to speak at a local school board meeting, someone scheduling their first client pitch without slides, just words. I realized my work would continue to evolve, propelled by every trembling voice that chose to be heard. As I shut down my laptop, Sparky leapt into my lap, purring. I stroked his fur and whispered, "Tomorrow we build more quiet leaders." Outside, the city lights shimmered like distant stars, each one a silent testament to possibilities waiting to be claimed. And so the story continues, unfolding in every hushed conversation, every mindful pause, every confident whisper that echoes into a roar of change. Because success isn't the volume of your voice, it's the resonance of your actions, and in that resonance, even the shyest among us can shape the world.